Right. Thank you. Thank you. We're really excited to be here, and I love the name of the conference, Pivot, because that's really what we need to all do in a bunch of different ways. So I think we hopefully will have an exciting 15-minute segment to really have you thinking about what change really means. So I want to quickly introduce two other panelists. We have Dana Williams, Marketing Director from Southwest Airlines, one of your favorite brands, no doubt, and David Edelman from McKinsey has joined us as well. So one of the quick things we want to try to do is sort of give you two gifts today, right? I'm sure a lot of speakers tell you there's a gift coming, right? I mean, there's actually a physical one in the back, but the one is really thinking about what's happening in the marketplace and thinking about social and about social executives in particular. So one question, are you ready for the social employee revolution? May or may not, that's happening. Number two, ask yourself individually, are you a social executive? You may answer absolutely, you might say absolutely not, or you might say I'm not really sure. So we'll try to define that today. But I think the answer to that question has a lot to do with your personal brand and the brand you work for today, or the brand you may create or start tomorrow. So why don't we start quickly with a couple questions for Cheryl. And Cheryl, can you help us understand, number one, what is a social executive and why is that important to the organization?
I would love to answer that question. It's my favorite question. A social executive instills the vision, the mission, and value into an organization to build an empowered culture of employees. And having done that, they are the leaders of the future tomorrow. And these leaders need to be authentic, they need to be genuine. And just as your messages are in branding, they need to be genuine. But without that, the social executives' involvement, you will never have social employees. And without social employees, you will not have a social brand. And that creates a social business. It's branding from the inside out. You cannot communicate externally unless you first communicate internally.
All right, thank you. So basically, the social executive is the role model for the employee. But they are also players. They're active. They're out there. They're tweeting. They're blogging. They're involved with their brand. They're showing the way, and they're leading by their example. So let's talk to a couple questions for David. David, first of all, what have you seen as the impact of being a social executive?
Well, there's a lot of different dimensions to it. First and foremost, certainly being from a professional services company, it helps build the firm's brand. It helps build my own brand. When I walk into client situations, people have a sense of who I am. But there's a lot of auxiliary things that come out of it. It forces us to be very cogent and clear on what our messages are. Really thinking about our content, what our point of view is, and then that can translate not just into what we say in social media, but in many different aspects of our conversations with clients. It also helps us internally make sure our employees know what we're saying, what we're thinking, sharing our latest thoughts, and having a consistent point of view down through the ranks. And then lastly, being engaged, it's not all just about outbound, it's about inbound as well. And I find I learn a hell of a lot from looking at the comments and the kinds of conversations that happen around what we do, because it's all building on each other, and just being in that fray has made a big difference in expanding the things that I've become very aware of.
Well, David, being a social executive sounds like a pretty busy job. So how do you find the time to do that?
Airplanes is one thing. When it's quiet, you can have time to actually compose stuff. But I think you also need some support. I mean, one of the things that we have set up is our internal publishing group makes sure that I get access to all the stuff McKinsey is publishing on a regular basis. We've actually invested a lot to make sure it's going through one funnel, so I have more content to talk about because I know what we're saying in general and what other folks in a pretty big firm are saying. So that kind of support is really important. Otherwise, it's just in all the nips and tucks around the day. I try to spend about 15 minutes reading up on things, seeing where I want to comment, and then I think a lot, frankly, on airplanes, because I am on airplanes a lot, about the main messages that I've seen in the last week or stuff that I've seen from my colleagues, and then write out the blog post then.
Excellent. So, David, so can you tell us how the activity that you're involved with fits into the broader scale across your company?
Well, we are thought leaders. I mean, that's what McKinsey is about, is getting ideas out there. And one of the things that we've realized pretty quickly is you can't just simply broadcast. You've got to be in that dialogue. We want to make sure that our clients realize that we're not just in an ivory tower putting stuff out there, but we're actually responding to what's happening in the moment. We're learning from that. And I think for us, trying to make sure our brand stays with what's happening in the moment is critical. And also, it just keeps us abreast of all the different developments and the kinds of conversations, things our competitors are doing. We actually see a lot about what our clients are saying themselves, so we understand their messages, and we use that, especially in our own conversations with our clients. It helps us be better prepared for meetings. So it fits in the whole fabric of a firm that's really based on ideas and conversation.
Right. Terrific. Thank you. All right, Dana, a couple questions. First of all, Southwest, one of our favorite brands. We've always said that Southwest has been a social brand way before there were social brands. So can you tell us a little bit about what Southwest does to kind of encourage participation from their executives?
Sure. Thank you, Mark. Southwest has been known for our culture. And I think that starts with the moment you hire an employee or an executive is hired. We're dealing with 4 different generations right now that are talking in the social spaces. So how do we create a culture that each of them can talk, as Cheryl says, in their channel that they feel good about? And so our job as brand ambassadors internally is, before we ever launch anything, before we ever do anything, we make sure that we market to each and every employee so that they can become the brand ambassador. And so whether you're an executive or you're a frontline flight attendant, we have the empowerment, we have the social policies out there, we have the tools they need, and we communicate with them daily. So I think it's providing the tools, but it starts with the moment that you hire your employee, and then it goes from there, and what kind of employee that is.
Terrific, thank you. Can you talk a little bit about your social media policy? I mean, Adobe has a wonderful way to describe theirs. They refer to it as giving their employees guardrails. So it's not a hard and fast, we're going to you got to do this a certain way, but they give them guidance, they give them support. So talk a little bit about your social policy at Southwest. It's
pretty simple. And I think that you'll find it in the book that y'all have written if anybody needs a copy of our social policy. It's simple, but it's easy to read. And one of the things we've done is we have a new hire class every Monday. And we have integrated the social policy information within that class. So whether you're a mechanic, a pilot, a flight attendant, an executive, you are getting that information. And so that's on a weekly basis. So it's not about just putting it out there, but making sure you're keeping it alive and keeping it active in the community.
Okay, terrific. Thank you. David, another question for you. What advice would you have for executives who are maybe hesitant to become personally involved in being a social executive?
I think it's important to realize that you have an opportunity to bring what's on your mind out, not only to the public, but also to the rank and file. It's a terrific way of communicating values, ideas, a point of view, and then also to realize that when you're out there talking, there's a lot of conversation that's going to be happening about your brand anyway. You might as well be a part of that, help to influence that, and learn from what's being said. So there often is hesitation because of risk management, so to speak, but the conversation's happening and you have an opportunity to be a part of that.
Great, thank you. So one other question for you. How do you develop a culture of innovation that involves your employees at McKinsey?
Well, we are a firm of ideas, and a big part of it is encouraging people to speak up, and a meritocracy where the best ideas win. And in our sessions, and we try in all the work we do to make sure that teams are coming together on a regular basis to really hash out what's going on, what are the bigger themes, what are the things we're learning, and then at the end of engagements, we think about what are the broader ideas that we can learn and take more broadly. And so it's actively encouraged. People are encouraged to publish. They're given support to do so. And it's just been part of the culture, and it just keeps growing over time.
Terrific. Thank you. Dana, another question for you. Do you have a mentoring program for executives at Southwest?
So basically, we have a social team, and they work with our executives, and the executives can reach out to them and have a one-on-one session and go through all the tools and feel like that they can be a little bit more secure as they start to write something that they feel good about in the channel that they feel good about. I think content is king, but at Southwest, people are king, and they're the brand ambassadors. And how do you weave all that together? And it's through those tools.
Yeah, that's great. And it reminds me of, one of the things we talked about in the book is IBM. They have an incredible thing they call reverse mentoring. So it's the same idea, realizing if you're gonna pivot in big time and you're gonna change, you need to have a procedure to really help your executives get on board with that. A question for the panel, for everyone. Can social executives lead to a competitive advantage for your brand?
I would say yes in Southwest. I think that it's interesting, whatever channel they feel comfortable in that they can write in. And I see most of our executives write blogging more than doing Twitter or some of the other things. But that's because they're more comfortable writing and then letting that out. But I do think that there's a great opportunity there. And I do see a growth in the amount of executives that are actually engaging in the channels.
There's certainly getting the awareness of your ideas and your distinct point of view out in a way that can communicate directly to folks. Another subtle area that we didn't touch on is recruiting. And being able to be out there in a social way with ideas that are leading the market gets more excitement from people in trying to be a part of that. And we have found actually a lot of terrific candidates that have come in from being engaged with us through social media.
Well, actually, Sandy Carter answered that question from IBM. Sandy Carter is the evangelist in social business. I asked her the question, Sandy, how did you get, can you hear it? Yeah, I'll take yours. Okay. So Sandy Carter answered that very question, Mark. And it's a hard question. How do you get social executives involved? And so Sandy simply said, you give them, let them be social in their own comfort zone. So that is, if they love to do videos, let them do videos of themselves and upload it to YouTube. If they like to blog, let them blog. If they like to tweet, like David does great tweeting, let them tweet, and David also is a great blogger as well. So whatever that comfort zone is, let them be leaders in that comfort zone. And with that, they will become the social leader and become the North Star of the brand.
Terrific. So finding ways to help them engage in the way that they can do it is really the best way in.
Yes.
Terrific. Okay. All right. I think we're out of time unless do we have time for questions at all?
Any questions?
All right. I did want to mention that we do have, I think it's in the front, a book signing. So we'd be happy to give you a book that has a number of case studies from brands like Southwest and IBM and a few others. And it is sponsored by our partners at Dynamic Signal. So thank you very much.
The crew on the baddest hip hop record.